Good evening, all. This is Rupesh from Peak Health Studio, Chennai. I welcome you to the program for the students by the students webinar series organized by ExRxIndia, founded by Dr. Chandramohan. And I need to thank Professor Duna from Dusat Creations for technical coordinating works and all the students who are attending and presenting in this for the students by the students webinar series. Today's topic is presented by Miss Avina from Father Muller College on the topic overview of research methodology. Miss Avina, you can take forward.
Good evening, everyone. I'll be talking upon overview of research methodology. Now, research is actually a topic which is many people want to know because as a PG student, you feel you're gonna go through this process of research, as well as afterwards when you are even practicing, you need to at least get a bit of idea through various research papers that you read or as you keep on growing, basically research becomes a part of life. And yeah, so yes, I'm just like in this topic, I'm trying to just highlight some points or certain things that is important or certain things that would be very general, so that you might at least know like how a research methodology is actually conducted or what it includes basically. I am not talking about the analysis part, which includes the statistical part, but yeah, so I'm just mentioning about the research process as such, and what types of studies are there and what it includes. Okay, so let's start in. Okay, so what is research? Now, research is a scientific and a systematic way of pertain for searching. Yeah. So research is a scientific and systematic search for pertinent information on a specific topic, which consists of stating the problem. So you have a problem. You have to define this problem. In between this confines of of this statement, of this problematic statement, in that region only you will undergo your research. So this dating the problem is one of the important aspect. Okay. Next is formulating an hypothesis. Okay, so why do we need to formulate a hypothesis? We need to formulate a hypothesis because we need to come to a certain conclusion by the end, right? So you need to find out it whether it is like if a particular study is having any effect or no. So you will feel like okay, it has an effect and you don't have an effect. So you keep two different assumptions open. So that is called as formulating a hypothesis. Then after you formulate the hypothesis, you find from the research problem, from the stating the problem, you come to know what kind of people you have to collect, what kind of people you have to look for. So then you have to go and collect the facts and data. So if you're doing an observational or if you're doing a qualitative type of study, you need to do more of questionnaires, you need to do more of surveys. So your collection will be more in those formats. It wouldn't be in terms of any kind of numerical aspects. So the collecting of facts and data will accordingly be divided on the way the problem is stated and what kind of research you're doing. Next, coming to analysis, analyzing the facts. So then you analyze whatever you've got, what you've seen more, what kind of a difference you've seen by whatever facts or data you have collected. And finally, you come to a conclusion. Whether you say that, okay, fine, or you use your hypothesis, you test the hypothesis, and then you say, okay, this I'm going to conclude, I'm going to accept this thing, and then you will accept that particular hypothesis, and that's your conclusion. So basically, it's just a complete process when all this is taking place. Next is objective of the research. Okay, so why do we actually conduct a research? Because we need to gain familiarity. We want to know what is the subject all about. So you want to gain a familiarity on the subject to portray accurately the characteristic of a particular individual or a situation or a group. Okay, so you suppose for an example, you see like a particular region is more prone to dengue, a particular region is not, or particular level of individuals having a particular group of blood group, they are prone to a certain disease. But whereas if you see another kind of a blood group doesn't have a certain factor of a disease, so you need to like find out like okay, you need to like generalize all these things. So you use research to find out okay, what is that thing that is there difference between them. Okay, next, to determine the frequency through which something happens. Okay, if the person is getting a disease at a particular month, for example, in the month of February, the person is having the disease, the next February, the person is having it, or whether it is continuing in the same month and how many times. So, all that will be noted up. Okay, and hypothesis testing of causal relationship. So, what is causal relationship? So, you want to find that what is causing what. So that is basically a cause. So if I'm trying to find a cause factor, so because of an element A which is present in the environment is causing a condition, is causing a disease. So that is a cause. So that will find out a causal relationship. So a relationship between a person who didn't have anything when the cause is mentioned in the middle, and then when after the cause has introduced into the environment, into the population, and then the effect. So that is the entire causal relationship that is taking place. Okay, so now coming to types of research, there are four types of main research. One is a descriptive versus analytical, applied versus fundamental, quantitative versus qualitative, and conceptual versus empirical. So I'll speak to you in detail about this. So descriptive is what? Descriptive is when you are being more descriptive, you're being more narrative about it. You're going to speak more about the detailings of it. So the way you even collect such kind of research reports or research samples is also very different compared to any other sampling. Okay, so when you go for a descriptive type of a process, you will be more of surveys, you will be more into case reports, you'll be more into case series. There's more into the detailing of it. But when you talk about analytical is nothing but analyzing it. There'll be a lot of numbers, there'll be a lot of numericals involved, there'll be the equations. So it's basically trying to come into a conclusion. So but there's a thing when you do a descriptive and analytical research, you can convert a descriptive research to an analytical search. Okay, so like how does this go? So for example, all the descriptive research they have an element of all the W's. Like they have an element of W questions like who, when, what, why. So this will be like a narrative. This will be like a story. But when you come to the analytical part, so who, when, why, it will be like how and how, and so that all those kind of questions are answered in the analytical part. So for example, you come to know like this particular region is suffering from an epidemic. Okay, they'll be like who are they? So they are the number of people, what kind of people, what kind of a race of a people is there. But when you turn it to an analytical field, you'll be like, okay, from this number of people or from this group, how many people are there, and then you will analyze whether it is more predominant in women or predominant in men. So that's how a descriptive analysis is converted to analytical analysis. Next, coming to an applied versus fundamental research. Now an applied research is more about a practical way, like if a population is suffering from a condition, so what is the practical way or methods you will try to find a solution which is already present within the community. So how would you try to get a solution for these problems? Whereas in fundamental, you will try to get or you'll try to develop solutions within the population. Okay, in applied, the solution is already there within the population, but you're trying to fix it up together. You're trying to analyze and get it up together. But in fundamental, you're trying to make new interpretations and new inferences and new solution to all the problems. Okay, so now coming to quantitative versus qualitative. So as the name says, quantitative is more dealing with numbers. It is more of causal relationship kind of a research, whereas qualitative is more of again based on how you feel. It's very abstract. Okay, so I'll be dealing and I'll be speaking a bit about qualitative and quantitative more in the further slides. Conceptual versus empirical. Now conceptual, as the word says, conceptual, it's more of an abstract. It is more based on a concept. Okay, so it's said that many theories, when they combine many theories together, you get a complete mixture of a concept. So that is basically a conceptual, but empirical is a theory. So it's based only on a one particular theory you're trying to do a research. In conceptual, you're trying to get a research done by whatever you are understanding through various theories. Okay. Now coming to other types of research. Now these are just like another types of research, but they're not detailed or not neither they are spoke on a um overall basis, but then they're just been like they're just like the other researches that also can be used while studying. Okay, the first one is one-time research. When you do the research only once, that's it. Next is longitudinal research. It's like a time period, like you have a complete time frame, and you conduct research on parallels of time. So you'll conduct a research in March, then you conduct a research next time in another March, I mean the next year, then again you continue in March of the next year. So that's more of a longitudinal research. You're going in a particular fashion, you're having equal time intervals. Okay, then you have something called as a field study. Field study is basically you're conducting a research on the field with whatever and however background or whatever is available. So at the grassroots level, you kind of conduct a research. Next, coming to laboratory research, wherein the research is conducted in a specialized environment, wherein the particular whatever environment is met to, or it is simulated to the environment of where the population or where the research is going to be applied. Next, coming to exploratory research, wherein you go deep within and then you find out like what is there. You try to analyze, you try to get a lot of things from whatever is available. So you're trying to get more and more knowledge and consistency. Then coming to diagnostic research, wherein definitely you need where you're trying to diagnose a particular condition or a disease. A formalized research wherein you have a proper standard, or you have a proper terminology, or you have a proper structural method, and in those structural method way you actually perform the research. Then you have a historical research. So you're having a research which is based on history. You're on the whatever findings were there from the past, you just go through the past and you try to get a research from that. Next, coming to conclusion oriented research. So in conclusion oriented research, you aim that your research which is concluded is satisfying whatever your question or research question is, and that's it. You just need to just have a certification that your inference is uh, you've got your inference accordingly to whatever your question is, and that's it. But when it comes to decision oriented research, it's basically more of a teamwork. So you are framing your research, you are concluding your research in such a way that there is scope for decision in the future. So that's more of a decision oriented research. Now coming to qualitative study, as I told you, qualitative is based on um, the way how it is. It's more of an abstract kind of a research method. Okay, so what do they the inclusion of qualitative study includes grounded theory, phenomenological research, and the Delphi's method. Okay, so now coming to grounded theory. Now grounded theory is basically you try to generate theory, you try to generate data from from the population itself, and you're generating from the grassroots level, you're generating it from the foundations from that place. Okay, so it is a very confirmed kind of a study method, and it's really good because it gives a very effective study. And yeah, so it's a good method of conducting a qualitative study. So the strength of this kind of study is its effective approach to build on new theories, finding negotiated and refined, and helps in generating future investigation and the research. So since it's a very you're developing new theories, so it gives more space for it to develop when the research future, because when the research takes place or stems up in the future. But the problem is because you're having all this just developing, you're getting up into you're getting new theories. It's going to take a lot of time because you're coming up with new things. You need a lot of you need a lot of work, you need a lot of effort. So it's going to take a lot of time. So that is one biggest drawback of it. And there's a lot of data you need to collect. You have to go through a lot of big process. So that's the drawback that you deal with grounded theory. Whereas when it comes to a phenomenological research, So when in phenomenological research, it's most based on a very abstract way. It's based on intention, intuition. It's based on experience. It's based on how the person behaves. So it's just like a lived phenomena, like how the person is feeling. So the research is all about that. For example, uh, you take about the the person in a particular area, like it's COVID condition that's happening right now. So in a particular area, what is the mind state of a particular population because of this situation, because of the pandemic happening. So here you can get a different or a varied level of emotions of people. You will get people on a very extreme of fear, or you might get people in a middle amount of fear, or you might get people among about just fine, like they're not as fearful as the others. So it's a very abstract way. It's not something that you can actually describe, or you can get into proper terms for it. Okay, so such research is also again conducted more with narrative, and it's more with questionnaire based method while conducting these kind of study. So yeah, now I'm talking about epoch. Now epoch is basically you're trying to find out biases and assumptions in order to explain the phenomenon in terms of its own inherent system or meaning. So now if you go to a population like this, and here you come to know that the person you need to find out whether you are trying to get in some element which is not present in the particular population or no. So that process is very crucial when you have a phenomenological study. Okay, so other ways of reduction of this epoch will also include bracketing. So you kind of remove out the areas which you think is repeated over and over again when a particular study, like a particular feeling within the study is being overtly repeated or seen again and again while collecting the data. That's called as bracketing. Intuition is like when you are using your thought processes into the particular findings, that is called as intuition. So you'll try to remove up the intuition, then you will analyze your study, and then finally you come with a description. So this entire research takes place in these stages. Next comes to Delphi's method. Now, Delphi's method is basically a decision making method. So, it's more of a group method. It consists of panelists who come together and discuss to a conclusion of a particular study. So, what happens in it? There are like 4 rounds which take place. So, the first round is where the people like the questionnaires are given to the respondents, and when the respondents give the answers back to the people, and then they're distributed to the panelists together. So this consider the first round. Then the second round is where the arguments, I mean against and for, like there is a difference which is formed between whatever data is accessed, and it would be classified into against and classified into for. So in the second round, this is been like the foundation of the argument is being found. The third round will be like discussion between the panelists about how these formation um, of the arguments will be there between the panelists, like what should be accepted, what should not be accepted, and it'll be a complete round of negotiation and all. And when you go to the fourth round, it's where you present your entire conclusion. The panelists will present the conclusion, and that's how the entire process, the Delphi's process, is conducted. Okay, so but the problem is like obviously there's going to be panelists, there are going to be a group of experts who are going to take the process, but there would be some kind of limitations too. Okay, so the limitations that would be like simplification urge. So basically you're getting your data from the respondents. There might be a lot of chances that this kind of data would be simplified in such a way that it would be understandable to the panelists. So they could change a lot of things. Okay, then comes to illusionary expertise. So as they're coming from respondents, the panelists might not understand what the respondent actually wants to speak. So they might have their own illusion about a particular thing. So that could also cause a lot of hampering with the data which is been coming in, which is incoming for the person. Next comes the sloppy execution. So sometimes what happens is like there is no proper execution of the decision by the panelists. Like they just come to a conclusion because probably they just want to finish the discussion up, whether it's prolonging or whether they're not too much interested into the topic. So there could be a lot of just like very slack behavior when it comes to the concluding part of the decision making process. Then overselling is a process. What happens is in overselling is like the person gets a lot of like the same articles, get the same amount of respondents keep on responding, and the same panelists maybe just keeping on giving the same decision. Maybe they might be having a different kind of group of sessions, that a group of panelist sessions that take place, and the similar people are called at the similar time. So it's not giving any new emergence to any new theories. It's just like the same thing has been repeated to the same number of panelist people, and that's the process of overselling. And deception. So when the data is being given to the panelists, the data is could be manipulated before it is given to the panelists, but the panelists might take it as it is. They wouldn't go into details of it. Panelists, as well as when it comes out, when the paper comes out, it would be a state of deception for the people who are getting the research paper done. Okay. Next, quantitative study. In quantitative method, it's more of objective, as we said. It's more based on how on numbers or numerical manner. Okay, it is conducted through polls, questionnaires, observations needs. It's more of a quantity. So now these are the entire types of quantitative study design, the different types of quantitative study design. uh, Quantitative. Now when you come to case reports, now I wouldn't case reports is more of a descriptive kind of study design. It's not, doesn't have more, see, like quantitative and descriptive can be overlapped, but quantitative and qualitative cannot be overlapped. Okay, so that is one distinction which I would like to bring forth. And yeah, so this is the quantitative study design. So case reports are kind of a descriptive study design. It doesn't have analytical methods that's taking place. But now coming to case control, wherein there'll be a case and there'll be a control along with it to see like how the study is being performed. Cohort is basically you're trying to see, you're trying to learn, you observe the phenomena of how the disease process is taking place at a group of individuals. Okay, it could be a retrospective cohort, it could be an prospective cohort. I'll be speaking about this more in future slides. Quasi experimental study design is nothing but an experimental study design wherein there is a lot of statistical analysis taking place. But in quasi experimental studies, it's more of a randomization is not taking place in quasi experimental study. Randomized control, RCTs, which we all are very sure of or we know of. Then comes to systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Systematic review is basically what, like all kinds of reviews that are available okay, in a particular topic of your interest, and you search it in whatever search engines that is available. It could be PubMed, it could be Scopus, it could be Science Direct, it could be um, BMC Journal, uh, can be anything. Okay, so you Embase is one of the best. So Sinhal and Cochrane Library. Okay, so anyways, Cochrane Library, Sinhal, and Embase are mostly systematic review journals, so where you get a lot of systematic reviews from these sites. Others are just like the review, you get reviews from the other sites too. Okay, So in systematic review, you get whatever knowledge is available from a particular topic. Okay, you actually have to identify the question, then you go for the inclusion exclusion criteria, then you search for these kind of studies from all these kind of search engines, and then after, as you get all these studies, then you need to sample, or you need to filter it out based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria. And then you need to check up if there's any bias or anything which is present, and then finally get into the formulate a complete conclusion with whatever you have found. And that's the way how you actually conduct a systematic review. But when you conduct a systematic review, there are levels. Okay, there are different levels: level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So level 1 is level 2, they're based on the types of study that you've taken. As we've seen the previous things, like this is a pyramid, right? So if you see, like, randomized control studies are given a priority, it's given a level 1 evidence when you come to systematic review. So similarly, there are different studies, they're given different levels in systematic review, which is important to say whether the systematic review is a strong review, and whether how much you can rely on that particular systematic review that is done. Okay, also a systematic review with to accept a very good systematic review, there is something called as a forest plot, which is plotted by a researcher while connecting the systematic reviews, mostly seen in the result part. So when this forest plot is plotted off, you can see a lot of results in that region, and that's how you come to know the quality of the systematic review. I wouldn't go much in detail, but you can definitely go online and check on forest plots. Okay, coming to systematic review versus meta-analysis, we always get confused. Both are reviews, right? But systematic review is just like a general review of all kinds of study. But when you come to meta-analysis, it's more of study of the analytical part. So more of the analytical part is being taken to study in the situation. Okay, so this is what the diagram is trying to say. Systematic review is more about collecting, reviewing, presenting. But when you come to meta-analysis, it's more about statistical techniques, which is used to summarize the data. Okay, so this is the study which is trying to say observation design. Okay, this is design comes into play. So when you talk about non-analysis, it is more of an observational. Okay, where you're just seeing that how a treatment is gonna work on on the population. Is the treatment which is given, O is the measurement or observation. Okay, next, you've not measured the pre part. So when you're coming to a non-experimental pre and post, so you will measure the pre and you measure the post. But when you come to experimental, you'll have another counterpart with you too. Okay, so now we're having quasi-experimental. In quasi-experimental, there's a static group comparison. So you will give a treatment and you'll measure, and then you will even compare it along with another observation group. But then when you go to a static group pre and post, so you will measure the pre, then give the treatment, then again the post, and you'll also measure the pre, and after a particular time, in comparison, in parallel, you will measure the post of the control group too. Whereas in time series, you basically, what you try to do, you try to see whether it is it the vaccine, or whether is it the treatment that is effective, or whether the disease process is there is the same. Like you're trying to find the trends basically. Okay, so you will observe the person with, like, you'll take a particular series of observation, and then you see, okay, if the disease process is on a similar or is linear, and then if it is linear, and then when you give the treatment, is it maintaining the same linearity after the treatment? So you'll have measures after the treatment. Okay, so that's what happens in time series. So then coming to experimental, that is randomization. So you'll randomize and then you'll see post, or randomize pre and then you'll see post. So it's continued in the similar manner. Okay. next, as I told you, I'll speak about case control and cohort. So this is a case control study. So mostly case control study is more of a retrospective study. So you go more in the past to see it. It's nothing more, as I told you, that it's more of descriptive kind of a study. It's not, you're not going to quantify anything much. Okay, so here it's like you see a population, you see the cases, and you see a control. You will see whether the case was exposed or no, whether control with the case is exposed or no, and accordingly you'll come to any inference. But when you see a cohort over here, cohort can be bidirectional. It can be retrospective as well as prospective kind of study. Okay, so you will see a population, then you see the person without the illness, when the person is exposed and not exposed to the illness, and what are the response when the person is exposed or no. So this happens in a cohort study. Okay, now coming to designing a methodology. So how you would actually have a proper research plan. So here I have mentioned should look like. Okay, there should be a title which has proper title, proper question. There should be a proper research question, and it should also meet the criteria of a PICO format. Okay, population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. So that should be mentioned in your title very well. Next, coming to abstract. Your abstract should be well detailed. It should give a complete summary of what you've been conducting in the study and what the person is expected to find. Next, coming to the purpose of study, like why do you feel you want to do this study? It includes a background, whether what's kind of like the other studies that you read through, and what actually made you, what purported you to go ahead and go ahead with this study. So that will be the purpose of study. The method of what kind of how the method was conducted, whether what inclusion criteria you had, what exclusion criteria you had, what was the type, what was the sampling method that you chose when you're taking the study. What is the sample size estimation that you choose, what is your significance level, what is the alpha level, etc. So all that comes into the method. And once this method is done, you have to literature cited and informed consent. So you take the literature, whatever is from whichever sources you've got all these kind of evidence, and then informed consent from the a person whom you're going to take the study done. So when you're doing a study, you have to check out these other things from external sources. So this is more of the administrative support that you need while you're conducting a study. You need to know about the budget. Okay, your budget includes all kinds of things, like it could include your travel charges, it could use your stationary charges, it could be use of any other equipment charges. So all these things that come into a budget planning. So you need to know a proper budget planning, whether you've been funded or no. So it's all been included in the budget of when you are trying to design a methodology. The resource and the environment. So from where are you doing it? Are you doing it in a college? Are you doing it in a hospital? Are you doing it by your own self? So this all comes under the umbrella term of research and the resources and environment. And personal. Now personal describes you as a person who is taking a research time, whether you are a PhD scholar or whether you are an MPT student or whether you are the final year BPT student. So accordingly, what are the important, like whatever materials you should be accessing. So that's all about it. Then coming to sampling techniques. So sampling techniques are majorly two. One is probability sampling techniques and one is non-probability sampling techniques. Now probability means there is a definite chance that it could be there, whereas in non-probability sampling methods, it's more of there's no probability of chance happening in this region. Okay, so in non-probability we have convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, snowball sampling, and quota sampling. Okay, convenience sampling, as you conveniently, like whoever like however you're able to get a sample, a person for your study, that would be a convenient sampling. Judgmental sampling or purposes. So purposely you will select a particular group or a particular student because that particular student will meet your criteria. So that will be more of a purposes sampling. Snowball sampling, I would give an example, like if a person has got injury and you want to conduct a study on the person of this particular injury. So you might tell this person that if you find someone of a person who has an injury like you, please can you inform them. So they will act like a snowball. They'll go and get they'll get another person who has a similar injury, and so on and so forth. So you're collecting people just by a word of mouth, by one person who's just who's giving the information to another person. Quota sampling is based on the quota of people that who are suffering with a particular condition. Simple random sampling, as we said, like it can be based on chit method, it could be based on lottery method. So you're drawing lottery or you're drawing the samples based on these methods. Clustered sampling is basically you make you make different divisions of people of samples, and they contain people of for example, uh, if I have um, people who are wearing blue, green, red, and they are present in one cluster. So it makes you'll have clusters of this three combination present in your 4-5 clusters. For example, you need a cluster, 4 clusters in your sample pool. So you'll have 4-5 uh, 4, for example. So 4 clusters of people in your sampling group. Okay, systematic sampling, you give a number to each and every person, and randomly you will be like, okay, for example, the group of 20 people, and you tell each one of them to count like 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5 till the 20th person, and then you make group of only ones, group of only twos, group of only threes, group of only fours. So that is more of a systematic sampling. So you're giving a systematic number. Stratified random sampling is basically you will have, like as I told you in the previous one, you like people wearing blue color, people wearing green, people wearing red, they would be different groups. So you will make sure like one person from blue will be the one person from green, one person from blue will make one group of people, and similarly you will make like that 3 if based on the sampling number that you are gonna choose. So that is the way how you're gonna have a stratified sampling. Coming to reliability and validity, reliability is how much is your data which is free from error. Validity is something which is whether the device, whatever, whether your outcome is going to measure what it is supposed to measure. Sensitivity is the portion wherein it is measuring the positive, is it, suppose, like for example, you're going to measure the positive part correctly or no. And specificity is, are you going to measure the negative part correctly or no. Minimum clinical difference is basically when the treatment is applied to the person, there is a particular level wherein you see that, okay, when you see this much difference has happened, that means it's a sure shot confirm that the treatment is effective. So that is seen on the scale. So you will be like, for example, you will see like if a minimal clinical identified difference for a vast scale is 2. So if a person who you're treating with low back pain says that my pain has been reduced by amounts, by 3 digits, so then you can tell, okay, fine, this is your treatment is successful. So for vast scale, your minimum clinical identified difference will be 2. So similarly, there's a number for each and every scale. Okay, so this is a sensitivity specificity table. So as I told you, that sensitivity speaks about whether how much is your positive part, or the test which is proven positive is how much truly present. Okay, so it is given by the formula. This is the table. Okay, so it will be given by the formula A upon A plus C. Okay, whereas specificity is given by the formula D upon B plus D. Okay, so this will be speaking in this way. Coming to outcome measures are basically the scales which are used to check whether you are progressing, whether there's any change, whether uh, it basically gives a kind of a view whether your treatment is being effective or no. Okay, and also this is very important because it helps us in a lot of policy making procedures. It helps, it provides specific intervention to be mentioned in a specific way, reflecting the interest of groups and stakeholders. So it's just not based on a physiotherapeutic level. It's also based on people, and it's also based on policies. It's based on a state level too. So outcome measures play an important role. Okay, so how is an outcome measure different in physical therapy than in a medical research? So in physical therapy, a lot of concepts are overlapped, a lot of things overlap. So it's a little more difficult. Plus, the people would be a more like there's a lot of work involved when you go to a physical therapist. Like it's more based on how it's more based on the social level. It's more based on the domains that we use for outcome measures are pathological, body structure and function, activities, participation, personal context, physical context. I mean, that we have outcome measure. Type 1, type 2 error is usually done when we state a hypothesis, as I told before. Okay, so basically, when you state a null hypothesis, okay, null hypothesis is nothing but like you say, when you state take a question like seeing, you like to see whether the, when you state a null hypo, like see whether like a particular condition, like yeah, if your particular people have null hypothesis, basically whether it is there or no. Okay, so like how would I say this? uh yeah uh like for example, a person is having uh you ha- okay, are there if the but if a person okay, for in a person, like if you take a COVID population, so you, for null hypothesis, like to say like whether the person is having any taste sensation or no. So you null hypothesis will be a no, that person doesn't have any taste deficit, sensory taste deficit. And alternative hypothesis will be like, okay, the person does have some kind of any taste sensation deficit. So when you have these hypotheses, then after you have stated that this is your null hypothesis, this is your alternative hypothesis, you go ahead to set an alpha. Now alpha is nothing but as level, is called as a level of significance. So what happens in alpha, like basically you set, usually people set alpha at 0.05 level. So why do they set this? It's a long story, but to cut the long story short, it's basically you want to have at least 95% of what you are trying to test as a positive thing. And maybe probably if it is not coming within the 95%, you can, it's okay that if you have people who are like 0.05 lesser than that level, to be having, who might not, like they would not be accepting it. Like for example, if you're taking um yeah, so for example, if you're taking like, if those 0.5 level, if they are wrong, it's fine. But if this crosses that level, then you're gonna reject the null hypothesis. Okay, so it goes on those method, in those lines. So after you state the level of significance, then you collect the data. You always need to collect, to set the level of significance before collecting the data. And also you need to even certify what is a type 1 and type 2 error before collecting the data. Okay, so what you would mention as type 1 and type 2 error. So I'll be speaking about what is type 1 and type 2 error. After collecting the data, you will then run the statistical test as per what you want to see. It could be an ANOVA test, it could be an F test, it could be a T test. It can go various. It's a very big, vast topic altogether. But this test statistic is done to confirm whether you have to accept the null hypothesis or not. Okay, then you have to construct those regions within the plot, and then you come into a conclusion that you have accepted it or not. Okay, so then this is what I'm talking about, the table, the type 1 and type 2 error table. This is also called as a contingency table. Okay, so there is something called as p level. Okay, we all must have come to know something called as a p level. So in p level, what happens is, basically p level is called as probability of alpha being in an error. Okay, so if you have a higher p level, then there are more chances of having a type 1 error. But when there is low p1, then p levels, then alpha can be they may have less probability of type 1 error. So what is type 1 error? Type 1 error is um, when it's basically the test is positive. Okay, when the test is positive but you are not taking it. Okay, when the test is positive but you're not taking it, that's called as type 1 error. A type 2 error is when the test is negative but you're accepting the false part. That is type 2 error. Okay, so this is the difference between type 1 and type 2 error. And yeah, okay, so that's all about errors. Okay, and now coming towards the end of my presentation, this is more on after you find the research, after you come to a conclusion, after you have come to a conclusion of whether the hypothesis is correct or no, then you report the research. So there are different ways of reporting. You can either report it in the form of journals, you can either report it in the form of poster, or you can either report it in the form of an oral presentation. Okay, so oral presentation and poster takes place on a platform or on a compendium, or if you have this thing, when you have a conference on those levels. But journals is basically more you go and then you make a research form, you make a detailed report of your research and you give it to a specific journal as per it is, as per you have thought of presenting to the publication. So a very big process which is involved in publicizing your journal and your report into a particular journal. So this is just a brief overview of what research consists of. Mind you, I've not actually gone into the details, but this is just like the brief thing. So thank you, and yeah, just let me know.
Okay, thank you, Aina. Let's end this session. See you.